Hello. So this is our last week together, and ironically, we're talking about termination of services between the social worker and the client, okay? So far we've talked about, the building of a rapport with our patients or clients, the assessment phase, the intervention phase, and now we're at termination. So this week your activities are polling activity, your reading, your quiz, your video activity, the regular things, the helper studio, a case study, and an exercise. There should also be maybe a reflection activity in there somewhere. It's our last week together. August 2nd is the final due date for all of your assignments. Get in there, get them done. There won't be an extension on your assignments, so please don't log in on Friday night or Saturday night and try to get all this done at one time. We all know that there are glitches, and as I've said through every lecture, I hope you're staying on task, and you should have been staying on task this whole time, and hopefully most of you just need to complete this week's assignments. So termination of services. So we meet with a patient, build a rapport, we assess our patients, we build plans with our patients. So we've got case plans, objectives, goals that we're working towards, and so at the end of it all, the working relationship has to come to an end, right? They are not going to always be in our lives, and this chapter really focuses in on what happens during this phase of termination. We want to focus on outcomes, process, and satisfaction. When we talk about outcomes, we're talking about measurable outcomes, right? So when we build goals with our patients, for instance, I have a 5-year-old patient who has regular outbursts and kind of like some anger stuff going on, and what we worked on is reducing those outbursts, and it's a measurable goal. So in the beginning, we have a baseline of patient has 10 outbursts a day, and we want to reduce that to 0 outbursts a day. But to get to that point, we create plans with our patients, like maybe the first month we work on, let's reduce it to 9 outbursts a day. So we're measuring these outcomes to a place of termination. Once we get to our goal, it's time to set them free, right? They've got the coping skills they need and the knowledge they need to function without us in their lives. Changes in target behaviors. I've got a patient who has some relationship issues, for instance, and she struggles with her communication with family members, and so how about we use I statements, and I feel this way when you say this, instead of you made me feel this way when you said this, right? And we can measure outcomes that way too, and in our meetings with our patients, asking how things are going, and making sure that they're using their coping skills that are recommended, that they've hopefully helped to generate on their own. And once they get to a place where they're experiencing healthier relationships, for instance with this client, okay, let's set you free. Changes in severity of problems. I've got a lot of patients right now at Journey Recovery Center who are experiencing unemployment. So we talk about applying for and obtaining jobs. So changing in severity of problems could be as simple as my patient obtained gainful employment, no longer needs services, no longer needs assistance from a case manager. Okay. Process. We always, when we're in the termination phase, we want to talk to our patients about how they perceive their progress. We can do that in a couple of ways, and the book talks about outcome rating scales and session rating scales. I really like these. I actually want to start implementing these in my practice, and the book was quite the refresher for me. And outcome rating scales used at the beginning of a session, right? They indicate with a mark on a line how well they've been doing. So that gives us a baseline for, how well our interventions are with this particular client. Is the intervention working? Do we need to go back and maybe talk about interventions that we haven't talked about before, something else that might work better? It kind of gives us a baseline and idea of how our patient is doing or our client is doing. Session rating scale, client marks on a continuum between two statements. I did not feel heard, understood, and I felt heard, understood, and respected. So that also gives us some reflection as a practitioner. It gives us the ability to reflect, okay, if our client isn't feeling heard, understood, respected, we may need to reconsider our approach, right? So process, and then satisfaction, offering instruments to determine outcome measures. So at St. Elizabeth, where I work, we utilize a survey. We call it a patient perception of care survey. We review that data monthly and we implement improvements. So it's just an ongoing process there. Termination. Termination is simply formally or informally ending the client-social worker relationship. It may occur when goals are achieved, when clients transition to other services. For instance, I've had to terminate patients because they needed a higher level of care, right, than outpatient care. We've recommended inpatient care to patients who've been unable to discontinue their use of illicit substances, and they may have been involved with me as a case manager, with a therapist, and it's not enough. It's not what they need more, right? They need more assistance to get to a functioning level. So we may end services in a situation of that when time limited services are concluded. What that makes me think of is insurance providers. Usually when we bill, for instance, for case management services, it's a 3-month, 90-day service. And unfortunately, and you'll learn this as you begin your practice, as a clinician, you don't quite get to determine the level of care that your client will receive. The insurance providers will be doing that. And while it's a little it's very frustrating, I'll just be honest. It happens. And sometimes we may have to end services due to those time constraints, okay? Be prepared for that. When clients or social workers leave the helping profession or leave the helping environment, we terminate services. When to begin a termination of services? At the very beginning of your communication with your client, you should be talking about the fact that you will not work with them forever, that there is an end to this, that you want them to achieve a goal, and eventually you will have to terminate the working relationship. You want to go ahead and prep them for that at the very beginning of your communication with them. And in doing that, you're also talking about duration of care. Maybe you'll have an idea of how long you'll be working together. And maybe you won't, and you tell them that too. Lots of times I tell my patients, I want to help you work towards this goal. Not sure how long it's going to take, but we're going to get to that goal, right? And as soon as that goal is achieved, I'm going to set you free. And we just always want to prepare our patients for that termination phase so that they can be successful. 4 tasks of termination. Evaluate services provided. Determine when to implement termination. Mutually resolving emotional reactions experienced during termination phases. You'll get really close with your clients and they might go through some emotional processes and maybe not feel that they're ready to be out on their own without your assistance, but it's your job to remind them that they've got the skills, that they've shown you that they have these skills, that they're successful in their goal, their achievement of goals, and you just encourage them as you set them free. Planning to maintain gains achieved and to achieve continued growth. So I just terminated a patient who's moving to Somalia, and some of the things we talked about were how are you going to maintain your sobriety once you're there. So continued growth, right, and maintenance of their success is something you want to talk about during that phase as well. There are unplanned and planned termination phases. Unplanned, the client withdrawals. Planned, the client achieves goals. Unsuccessful planned termination, so dissatisfaction with the helping relationship, social worker not competent to address client needs, client fails to follow through with treatment recommendations. I just had this happen a couple weeks ago where I had a patient who was recommended to a higher level of care and wasn't interested. That relationship was terminated, unfortunately. I mean, we have a job to make clinical recommendations based on what is best for our client. We want to make sure that their needs are acknowledged and that we explain it in a way that they understand that this is a clinical recommendation. Your behavior, like for instance, this person started using substances again after a long period of not using substances. So we recommended outpatient care. So like a weekly meeting about substance use disorders to keep them on track. They didn't feel that they had a problem. They discontinued services. So it was an unsuccessful, termination there. And that happens. So I just wanted to kind of briefly touch on the termination phase with you guys tonight and this week. Just make sure that all of your assignments are turned in by August 2nd. I cannot provide you with extensions, so please don't wait till the last minute. It's been such a pleasure working with you guys. I've learned so much from you, and I wish you guys the best as you move forward. So many of your Helper Studio videos they blow me away. I think you guys are going to do great in the field with what I've seen in your Helper Studio videos. I hope you've received my feedback well, and you can always reach out to me. You have my email, so feel free to reach out to me anytime, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your summer, and as you move forward in your career, I hope that you guys utilize one another. As I've been through the program, and I reach out to my cohort, like the people that I was in graduate school with, for instance. I reach out to them frequently to bounce ideas off of them. And again, you can reach out to me too, always. And so best of luck to all of you. Congratulations. We made it through this 10-week course, and have a good rest of your week. Thanks.